Hey guys, sorry for the wait, but welcome to the second episode of the Kel Kel Show. I'm Kel again, and I'm here on my left, I guess, or whatever, is Kel and Abel. Today we're going to talk a little bit specifically about the priest class, ways to draft it, some things, some tips on that. And then if you stick around for after the show, we're going to do a draft to kind of give you examples of that stuff. And then we're also going to do a little bit of what we call like overrated, underrated. We'll do this segment once in a while. It'll basically be like one card that maybe people are overrating, one that they're underrating. And also we're going to talk about how to salvage a bad draft. One of the things that we've noticed is that kind of sometimes sucks because you'll get like 5 or 6 bad buckets, and these bad buckets are pretty bad sometimes. They're not even they're really bad. When some of the low buckets are they're atrocious. So trying to not get triggered by that and just kind of have a good approach to making that deck work and get 5 to 7 wins as opposed to going less than 3 or something. So do you have anything else to add, Kellen?
No, let's get into it. Let's start with let's talk about the priest class. Yeah,
let's do that.
Well, I think before you know how to talk about a class, you have to understand what the meta is that we have around us, what the meta is. And last week we talked about that quite a bit. We talked about how this is more of a tempo meta, and because Paladin and Rogue are two of the best classes, it's going to be really easy for some class to get on the board and push their board advantage. Right. So if this is a tempo meta, how does Priest work in that meta? Well, Priest is not a tempo class, right? It's one of the control classes typically. You use your hero power to get value by healing up your minions, so you're generating value every time you heal your minions. But you're not given aggressive early game cards most of the time. So what that means is Priest needs to try and fight for the board early, and then pull ahead later with 2-for-1s. That's what it specializes in, right? It's Shadow Madness, Holy Water, these 2-for-1 cards. In order to cast those cards, they need to get ahead early or be at least close to even early so that they don't die while they're trying to draw cards.
Yeah. I think that we got in the KNC meta when, Scream and the real slow priest was a thing. You didn't quite need those swing turns like that as much because you would rely on getting to Scream turn, doing all that, and then you would just kind of win the game. Now, you need those mid-game swings and those 2-for-1s, but to get that, you need to actually set that up, or the priest can't really just win on the board alone 100%. They need some of those swings, I think, is what I always Shadow Madness to me was always the best example because it's, you take a card, you might get value from maybe a Death Rattle, you remove 2 minions, and then maybe you drop another one or something and you get back on the board. So,
yeah. Yeah, and so that's the kind of thing you're looking for with a priest. You want anything that's that's good early in the game, and if we're talking about the draft first, we can talk about the cards that you want at the beginning of your draft. So things you're looking for to make sure your deck is solid, that you have a good early game to compete with the Paladins and Rogues. The best way you could do that is taking strong attrition cards. So what that means is cards that trade 1 card for one of your opponent's cards at a good rate. So things like the Shadow Word Pain and Shadow Word Death are great examples of this. It's why they're so very strong. If you spend 2 mana to remove a 3-mana 3/3, you're not really gaining a card, right? It's just your Shadow Word Pain for their 3/3, but because you're spending 1 less mana on your card, you're gaining tempo there, right? So that's a really good example of a good attrition card. I think Shadow Word Death is the same thing. You spend 3, you usually kill 4 to 8 mana worth of stats. Obviously, you want that as much as possible, but sometimes you're going to be forced to take non-Shadow Words, and you're going to need to do things like take solid curve minions. That's the other thing you can do when you're not offered those premium spots of Shadow Word Pain, Shadow Word Death. Curve minions you might be looking at are 2-mana 2/3s, 2-mana 3/2s, and right now there's quite a few 3-mana 3/4s. If you could find an Injured Blade Master, so any of those cards that are just efficient at their slot. So they're good cards to play on curve. If you can pick those up, they're going to help you get past the early few turns into that later period where you can use your more powerful priest cards.
Yeah. I think that's a good. Do you want me to bring up the deck, one of your decks, or?
Not yet. First, I want to talk about drafting
sure.
because you can't just draft those early game cards, right? If you draft only those early game cards, you're gonna run out of steam, which is weird for a priest to do. But if you don't have a plan later on, you're gonna just
Oh yeah, we talked about this. I remember. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you need to do, we kind of mentioned this a minute ago, but drafting a few 2-for-1s, and this is where it gets kind of tricky because now you get into how many of each do I want, right? 2-for-1s mean cards that trade instead of attrition like 1-for-1s. 2-for-1s are cards that get 2 of your opponent's card for 1 of yours. Shadow Madness, I think we've already talked about. That's a great example. You get to kill 2 of their minions for 1 of your cards. That's not always going to give you a huge mana advantage, but it's going to give you a good card advantage. Thoughtsteal is a really good example too. It's 2 cards for just 1, but you're spending 3 mana to do that, and that's obviously tempo disadvantage because you're not playing stats for that.
Yeah, yeah. We also talked. What do we? Oh shoot, I was trying to remember what we were talking about before with that. But yeah, I agree with everything you're saying is right, for sure.
Woohoo! I've always wanted to be right.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I'm trying to think of anything else, but you kind of covered most of it.
So what are some cards you'd want to stay away from, Kalidar? Any ideas on like some things you might want to not put in your deck?
You want to stay away from like cards that can get like value traded back, like 2/3s, like you were saying in the if you play a 2/3 and then they play like a 4/3 or 3/3 and they get that value trade, like that's not very good for you. That's not the way you kind of win as priest. Like you need to take the board, so you need those high health minions as well that can maybe like survive more than one hit, and help you to like regain the board. Because most of the time, and I mean, if you're a priest and you like go through the whole match and have the board, then like you're pretty much gonna win. But generally, that's not how your matches go. So, I remember the thing I was gonna say. You were talking about like you need a backup plan. Like you're gonna eventually run out of cards if you draft a little bit too small. So like you want to definitely fit in a Thoughtsteal or even a Devour Mind. You need to have a little bit of refill, a little bit of value, but you can't go as greedy as we did. And like I always bring up the KNC meta because that was like the greediest priest meta I've ever seen. And like you can't go like you could draft 3 Devour Minds in that meta and you were fine. Like there was no problem doing that. As crazy as that seemed, like it was fine. You could draft 3 of them. You could draft like double Mind Control. So like you might want to look for cards like Mind Control, but you got to be careful at like how many of them you're taking, and it's all about prioritizing what is the most important thing for your draft, like what you want to like make your priority. So like I don't usually look for 2 Mind Controls in this. I'll look for 1, or I'll look for like things like Spellbreaker, things that can silence against Paladin. Like tech cards are good too. So
you want to avoid cards that are going to create that are going to be glutted up in your hand. So if you have, like you're saying, you don't want 2 Mind Controls. That probably goes for cards that cost 7 and up. You probably don't want more than 5. And there have been metas in the past where you want like 8 as a priest.
Yeah.
Now 5 is pushing it for me. If I have 5, 7 and up cards in priest, I'm nervous unless one of them Psychic Scream.
Yeah.
Something else to think about, if you're looking for early game cards, you can't just take any early game card. I think a good example of that is the 3-mana 3/3 Lifesteal, a Twilight Acolyte.
Are you talking about the
right?
no? Are you talking about the? I know what you're talking about. The
Acolyte of Pain.
Yes,
right?
You got it.
That's it. Acolyte of Pain, 3-mana 3/3 Lifesteal. That's a good example of a card that is understated. It seems like it's a good card for this type of strategy because it means you're not going to die because you're gaining life, and you're playing something on the 3rd turn. So you're doing something in the early game. But the problem is that 3-mana 3/3 is not going to fight well against a 3-mana 3/4. And if your opponent played a 2-mana 3/2 or a Bloodfen Raptor or something like that, that's going to eat up a mana that you spent. So that card, even though it is something to do on turn 3, it's not what you want to do on turn 3. So
right.
3-mana 3/3s aren't great unless they have an ability like Mind Control Tech that will propel them into another level. You want to make sure that your early game minions are strong enough to fight other minions that early in the game.
It's actually Acolyte of Agony. I looked it up because I knew it wasn't right. I couldn't remember. So it's Acolyte of Agony is that one because there's like 3 Acolytes. They all do different
Acolyte
things.
of Pain is just one of the most classic Hearthstone cards, the 1/3.
Yeah.
That makes you draw cards. What am I doing?
It's okay. No, it's fine. We've been streaming all day, so it happens.
So what are do you have some deck lists for us, right?
Yeah. I'll bring up the first one here. This is your list first. So I can see. I haven't really honestly. I didn't really look at it myself real closely. So I'll get oh wow, you have 6 Shadow Paints.
So this is
What?
pre nerf, last week's nerf.
Oh my
So
God.
it is a little more powerful than you'd be used to seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this deck has a lot of good early game, and you can see how much I focus on those Shadow Word Pains when I'm drafting this class right now.
Yeah.
A lot of my early game minions are Stubborn Gastropod, Knife Juggler, Northshire Cleric. These cards that they can be played early in the game, and they fight for the board, or if they're Feral Gibber or Crystalline Oracle or Northshire Cleric, they can be played later for a big advantage. So they actually serve 2 purposes, and that's another good thing for Priest. You want your early game cards to have a late game advantage. Now, Murloc Raider is a pretty big disappointment in this deck. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's the worst card in this deck.
Probably. I can't. Yeah. Yep. I definitely think that's the worst card in your deck.
Sneaky Devil's pretty bad in this deck too, but between those 2 cards, those were my bad buckets, and you are forced to take some bad cards. But because I have the 6 Shadow Word Pains, this deck ended up doing pretty well. And if you look at the upper tier of the deck, the more expensive cards, it has at 5 Holy Water, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards total at 6 and up. And that might not be a lot for an older Priest deck, but for this meta, it gives me exactly enough late game reach and late game control that I'm going to be able to stay on the board and compete with those mages and the warlocks that can draw cards and flame strike.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I'll tell you another card I found that's so hard to draft. At least I haven't. No, I have drafted, I guess, after the last hotfix, but Northshire Cleric seems like Northshire Cleric seems like it's very difficult to get into your deck because it's up against. I think it's it's either in the premium bucket or the second to best premium bucket. I can't remember which, but that's nice because the one thing in this deck you don't have a Thought Steal or Devour, but you've got card draw with that, and you've got card generation with Stonehill. So and you definitely want to look for cards like that. Stonehill's a great kind of card in Priest because it generates value but also helps you fight for the board. So it does 2 things really well for you. Oh, and you got double act. I didn't see the double Soul Priest. That's also nice. Yeah. So yeah.
An interesting pick during the draft of this deck was Coffin Crasher. As you might know from the set review, I'm not huge on Coffin Crasher.
Right.
I don't think it's really great. But what I liked about it in this deck, I was kind of forced to take something. This was about pick 26, I think, when I took Coffin Crasher.
Sure.
I already had the statue, but I didn't have the second mind control, and so I was really reaching for late game at that point. Mm-hmm. I believe there was a good 4-drop in that pack, maybe Fire Plume or something like that. But I thought at that point I need expensive late game cards that have the potential to win me a game by themselves. I can't take cheap early game minions and just fight for the board early because that's not going to win me the game eventually.
Yeah. I'll show you something in the other draft we're going to look at, but one card, well, I guess I'll talk about that when we get to that one, but I noticed that you don't have any Novas or any board clears. Did you have any offered in the draft that you can remember? Or
I did have a Holy Nova offered very early, but it was against an Akanai Soul Priest, and I like Soul Priest over Holy Nova unless it's getting later in the draft and I'm missing AoE. So I did not see any Spirit Lashes that I could take, and the one Holy Nova I was offered was against a card that I think is better. All
right, let's look at the next one. This is my friend and I played this deck most of the way. I played almost the whole deck with him. You can see in this one that he had double Spirit Lash. In this deck, it was the only reason I wanted to show this one was there was 2 things that I got experience in. One was a Lady in White, which was interesting. The other one was Mossy Horror. That card, probably 5 games became a 6-mana 7/7 and then just wiped out a Paladin board. So I think in Priest, this card is definitely a little bit performs a little bit better than other classes. I think the worst card in this deck was, actually Spellstone did actually do some work amazingly, but at times, but it wasn't definitely not the best card in the deck. But the double Spirit Lash was huge, really helped it out. And otherwise, then if you look through the deck, it's not very. Other than the fact that it's got the flashy Lady in White and stuff but that didn't happen every game. It's a pretty honest deck. Otherwise, it doesn't have anything crazy. It's just some decent cards and pretty even curve. He doesn't have a lot of the 1-drops, but he's got 3 2-drops and a pain, and then You know, Zealot with the Lash was also fairly decent. You know, so he's got some ways.
So what I really like about these two decks and what they both do really well is they have a lot of good early game answers that can catch you up on the board. The first deck doesn't have any AoE, but it does have 6 Shadow Word Pains.
Yes, that's crazy.
So now note those aren't minions, and the same is true for this deck. The actual number of minions at 3 and below is not very high, but the decks can both come back pretty quickly because of Shadow Word Pain or small AoE with Spirit Lash or Dustbreaker.
Did you have a Shadow Madness in yours? I can't remember.
I don't recall.
I don't think you did.
I think I do, but maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah. Royal Guard's been performing pretty well for me. I know a lot of higher level players that don't like it because of the flip of it and all that stuff. But honestly, like, especially in a slower class like Priest, like, usually you have enough value later in your deck that you can wait a turn if you need to, and it doesn't really, like, you know, maybe you, instead of playing it on 8, you Amber on 8, and then you play it as an 8/3 on 9. You know, so
yeah. But I'm surprised people don't like that card. I've had nothing but great luck with it.
I only find it hard to draft because I know, like, for instance, I see it in Paladin and I want to get a lot of late weapons, so I don't want to jam up that mana slot. You know what I mean? The only reason that I end up turning it down in a lot of classes, though, like Rogue and stuff, I love it. Like other classes where I need that reactive answer, you know, it's good. So I think those are some
initiative.
Yeah, I think those are some pretty good.
If you have an 8-drop with initiative, it's always that's a really powerful thing to have.
Yeah. And like a lot of times, in all honesty, sometimes in certain matchups, the 380 is even better because it removes something, and then it's just really hard to remove 8 health, you know.
Yeah.
And it also became an 8/8 Divine Shield with the Lady in White.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I forgot. That was the other thing. Like, Lady in White just made... You know, it actually made a couple cards worse, but most cards it didn't really matter that much, you know. So, pretty interesting, though.
So that's our thoughts on Priest. Basically, it's a fast meta, so it's a faster meta, so you have to make sure you have answers to the early game, but and then you have to have ways of capitalizing on being in the game through 2-for-1s and late game cards.
And I know a lot of... Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, after you. Go
okay, I was gonna just say that I know a lot of my viewers and stuff have talked about Priest and been frustrated because they're like, I like to play Priest, you know, the slower, greedy way because that's fun. But I hate to burst everyone's bubble, but you can't really survive in this meta that way. So you either have to, if you really enjoy Priest that way, it's probably not the right time to play it. You know, because some people just like to play certain classes a certain way, and that's fine. You know, but you won't have very good results being that greedy because you'll just get run over. And Rogue also, there's other classes that can also run you over, not just Paladin. So, but that's all I had to say about that. So.
Okay. Well, let's talk about some overrated and underrated cards because we have a couple.
Oh yeah. All right. I'm gonna bring up the first one. Here you go. And I got it all golden and blingy for you.
Ooh. You love gold cards.
I love gold cards so much. When I figured out that I could do this and put like golden animations and make it look nice on the stream, I was so excited.
Oh my god. Oh, is there the golden animation too?
Yes, I have it. I have like everything. I figured out a way. It's actually not that difficult, but yeah.
So the first card that you can probably guess that this one is overrated, not underrated. Vicious Scalehide. I have had my opponents play this card at least once per run, and I don't think it deserves that level of being picked or that rate of pick. It's if you just go. So I do something called the vanilla test on every single basic neutral card right away.
Yeah.
And that test is simple. You just take the cost of the card, multiply it by 2, and add 1, and that gives you the total number of stats that should be on the card.
Yeah.
And if you want to look at some examples of cards that are perfectly within the vanilla test, Bloodfen Raptor and River Croc are perfect examples of that. They cost 2 mana, which means they should have a total of 2 times 2, which is 4 plus 1, so 5 stats. And they both have 5 total stats. They're a 2/3 or a 3/2. Chillwind Yeti is the same thing at 4. And there's a number of them at 3. Injured Blade Master, the Black and Walled Pixie, like all those cards.
Right.
So there's a ton of things that are just exactly where they're supposed to be. and sometimes have an additional ability. Scalehide is underneath that, right? It's straight up just missing a stat.
Yeah.
And it tries to make up for it with the Rush, and Rush is worth maybe a full stat, but the problem is Rush is good at killing things, right? It's good at having initiative. 1 damage doesn't kill anything.
Yeah, and most of the time it's like getting a hero power from a mage hero power in your deck, but you're wasting a card. So because most of the time when you need that 1 damage, it's gonna die to most minions. The amount of minions that this can actually, well, I mean, if you're really lucky and it can kill something, that's really rare. But if it can actually it's even rare for it to be able to ping something and still live. Like, that doesn't even happen that much. Like, so that, it needs to do those 2 things to be good,
Right.
Like, militia commanders, like, the perfect example of, like, that's an overpowered, maybe that's not a great example because it's an overpowered one, but it is balanced because it's a 4-mana 5/5, it eats a 4-drop and some 5-drops, and then it still has 2 damage left on the board with maybe low health, but it's still on the board afterwards. This cannot do that, so, yeah.
So imagine having a priest deck that's doing pretty well. Your draft is going okay, and you elect to pick a vicious Scalehide. I don't know what that card is doing for you. Lifesteal isn't a strong enough ability in Arena because Arena is so much about trading stats on the board that your life total is just a resource that you're willing to spend all the way down to 1 or 2. So you're not worried about the lifesteal part. Spending 2 for 1 damage is just a bad rate, and then having a 1/3 is not a good enough leftover, even if you can heal it up. So we do not like Vicious Scalehide.
No.
That doesn't mean never pick it, but really consider your other options. If there's a card that is normal, just a normal card, it is probably the right pick over Vicious Scalehide almost every time.
Yeah.
Now, you have a card that you've fallen in love with, right?
Oh yeah, I have. I'll talk about it. All right, so this is the next card, and it's gonna. Ooh, it's all pretty. Kel blinged it again. Okay, Paragon of Light. So, this is a card that I kept seeing it in my in the buckets, and I just passed it and passed it and passed it, and then I had a 12-win Paladin recently, where it just snuck in. I don't know. I can't remember if I was just I just want to try this card, or because it's in a bucket that's hard to get it. I won't lie. It's not the easiest card to draft because it's usually up against fairly decent cards from what I've seen. But when I took it, it was not only did it trade really well because 2/5s right now are not trash because they 2-for-1 a lot of Paladin cards and tokens forever. But what I noticed was I had a Sneaky Devil and I had a couple small ways to buff the damage and the taunt and the lifesteal with, especially because I had I think I had 2 steeds. It was
disgusting.
I mean, I didn't obviously when you draft you're oh yeah, this is great, but how often is it going to happen? But to be honest with you, it really, the lifesteal even was surprising to me. In those matchups, that extra couple if they're forced to trade into it, you can almost go back to full health sometimes. If they have
one thing about lifesteal, lifesteal is very bad when it's just 1 or 2 points. But with Paragon of Light, it's required to be at least 3, which is already starting to be a pretty big chunk. And then most of the time when you buff it, you're not buffing it for 1. You're buffing it with Kings or like you were saying, Steed, or you might be multiplicatively buffing it. I'm not sure where I was going with that.
Yeah, it's okay.
You might be buffing it a bunch of times. Silver Sword stacks, all these things add up.
Silver Sword was the other big one. Yeah. It was. I think I had 2 Silver Swords, maybe 2. I probably should have brought the deck list, but anyway, I think the card looks 2/5 is not always the best stat, but because of its utility, it's really, really, and there's the bells card. Whatever was it? Sound the bells. Oh, I had to sound those. I think I had. The thing was, I drafted it and I didn't quite realize how many triggers I had. And the honest truth is, with the meta right now, the cards that you're taking a lot of these cards around this anyway. I purposely try to get 1 Sound the Bells in my Paladin decks. I don't like more than 1, but I like to get 1 because it's really good. Way better than I thought it was going to be decent, but it's better than I expected. And then you obviously take your steeds. You try to take a Blessing of Kings if you can. So you kind of naturally do these things, and so you don't have to It's not like you have to sacrifice your draft to make this card good, and it's actually not that bad on its own anyway. So it's very, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, if you just look at the cards, the neutral cards that are available right now, there's the following cards all buff Paragon of Light for 4 mana and less. You have Acarus Veteran, you have Fallen Sun Cleric, Shattered Sun Cleric, and Sneaky Devil. That's 4 cards that you're usually picking over bad cards that will be in your deck no matter what. And in Paladin, you want those cards anyways because you will have a board to buff because of your hero power. Yeah. So Paragon of Light just is... I think it's surprising how easy it is to make it have 3 attack.
Yeah.
Now,
and
that's not...
Go ahead, sorry.
If you are at pick 29 and you have 0 buffs, maybe don't take Paragon of Light, but even then, if it passes the vanilla test, right? 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Yep. That is equal to 2 plus 5. So it's never going to be bad.
Yeah. And I mean, if you have it gold, it looks really badass, too. Yeah.
That's true.
I have one, and I was like, I saw it gold, and I couldn't, like, it's like blinging by itself. It's like, so. All right. We're going to have to.
Gold, man. It's so funny.
We're going to have to do, like, some kind of, like, special on it sometime, but.
We're going to do top 5 gold animations.
Oh, that'd be so cool. Oh, I would be so excited. I'd be ready for that in a heartbeat. But yeah, and just so you guys know, like, not to get too off subject, but, like, Kellen and I are both, like, we're kind of experimenting with some different segments. We'd like to have some of them be... We're not necessarily going to do, like, class focus and stuff, like, every week or overrated, underrated every week, but we want to have some segments, like, maybe, like, 8 to 10 or maybe even less than that. I don't know. Just like some of them that we're going to rotate through that like people that watch will be familiar with, and when they see it on the screen and I have the agenda, which you can see like above me, you'll be able to kind of have an idea what that is, and then we'll have some random things that are news or different once in a while that haven't, are very unique, but that's kind of the gist of what we're trying to do. So we're kind of experimenting right now. I like class focus and overrated and underrated, I think, are 2 that are going to definitely stick around, All right, so the next one is one that Kellen kind of brought up, which I like, is how to salvage a bad draft. Because we all know that, like, with the hotfix, they messed around with, like, at first it was too crazy, so then they, like, got more bad cards. And I think to balance some of the more powerful classes, they've, adjusted the buckets and stuff. And some of the buckets, like, I did a Paladin draft today, and, like, I think I had to take 2 Noble Sacrifices and, like, not that they're bad cards, but they're not really what you want to be drafting. Like, in, like, 2 Noble Sacrifices, 1 Hand of Salvation. I ended up getting lucky because I got Prince Liam, like, which, like, kind of, like, fixed all the 1-drops that I didn't want to take, or 1 mana spells. But anyway, like, but it felt bad because I'm like, can I get, like, I would just take a 2-mana 2/2 at this point, like, anything, just to, like, not have to take this card. So it feels bad sometimes, like, but I think that you have to remember you'll have those drafts and you'll feel bad, but, like, it's actually important with this system for it to be balanced so that, like, the card quality is not, like, so high that, like, you hate playing it. You know what I mean? It has to exist even though it sucks.
I actually like when all the cards are good because yes, it feels. I mean, I know people complain that it feels more like constructed. I personally prefer it because I like that mid point where it's not completely random stuff,
right? And
I can play around things, but that's off topic. Anyway,
that's okay.
I like both. I actually really like the meta right now. I've been enjoying.
I do too. Yeah.
Okay, so I have some thoughts on how to salvage it when you do get those bad buckets, because there are 2 ways that your draft can go badly. Yeah. That way, one is you draft a bad curve, or you're offered a bad curve. Not that it's your fault that you drafted it, but that's one way things can go wrong. But we're not going to focus on that one today. We're going to focus on the bad buckets one, which is what you were just talking about.
Right.
So, what happens when you have 7 total buckets that are not good? So you're forced to take 7 bad cards. How do you make that work? There's basically one really, really good, consistent way to make it happen. And it doesn't mean you're going to go 12 with these decks. That's not what we're trying to do.
Right.
We're trying to take a deck that goes 1 wins, 0 wins, or like 3 and below, and get it to 4 to 7 wins. That's the goal. Right now on NA, I have a Shaman deck that is 7-1, and I thought in the middle of the draft, everything was going badly. I have a lot of bad cards in the deck, but it's at 7-1 right now because of the method that I'm about to talk to you about. Draft aggro. It's that simple. Now, there's some certain ways to do it, but if you draft aggro, there's a lot of things that you avoid from your bad cards. First of all, less cards will be seen in the game. So if you have 10
Yeah,
bad
that's
cards,
true.
you will only play a few of them. You won't play all of them. That's first part.
Actually, I didn't think of that one before. I like that point. That's true. I like that.
Yeah, you just get to see, and also your opponent gets to play less of their good cards, because when you are playing a bad deck that is slow, your opponent's 10 mana card is definitely going to be better than your 8, 9, and 10 mana card.
Yeah.
Just, it's going to be true. That's because your deck is bad and theirs isn't. So when you play slow, your opponent has more opportunities to play their best cards. So in order to avoid drawing your bad cards and seeing your opponent's good cards, you have to go fast. And this is already a meta that lends itself to being a tempo deck, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's some strategies here. The first thing you can do is look at your curve and prioritize early game. That's definitely the way you start with an aggro deck. And if you're at pick 17 and you're seeing that your deck is bad, this is a good place to start. Honestly, pick 15 and up is where I kind of switch. Like, things are going bad, and you can do this by taking something like Murloc Raider. I think is a great example. Dragonling Mechanic is another. Those are cards that are not good cards, but they do provide enough stats for their mana cost. That they give you some board presence. So they force your opponent to react to them in an awkward way, especially Dragonling Mechanic. I think that's a really good example here.
Yeah.
Because it does pass the Vanilla test. It is a 4/5 worth of stats. It's just that the 2/1 can be so easily killed. So,
right.
But what that means is if you play that 4-mana 4/5 worth of stats, your opponent is spending 2 additional mana on their turn to ping down your 2/1. So you're putting out stats that they might not be able to deal with. You want to remove cards that are situational from your deck. So in addition to drafting those good curve cards, you need to take out things like Lightning Storm. Lightning Storm is an amazing card, right? It is really good. But if you're given the option of Lightning Storm or Lava Burst in a bad deck, you better take that Lava Burst. That's how you're winning. You're never going to win by clearing your opponent's board 3 times. That's not going to happen. You need that Lava Burst. That's how you're going to take them out. And that's another thing, prioritizing reach. So early game and reach, which the Lava Burst is a great example of. Let me replace Lava Burst in that situation with a decent 3-mana 3/3, a Mind Control tech. How about that?
Yeah.
So that's a card that you can play on curve. You can just put it. It will always go and play on turn 3 without any problems, and you're not stuck with it sitting in your hand like you might be with Lightning Storm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be my main strategy of salvaging it. Honestly, in the Shaman deck I have right now, I made the mistake of taking 2 Lightning Storms, and it is killing me. And they never do anything because I'm just trying to kill my opponent before they do big stuff. Other classes have different strategies here. They're similar strategies, right? Like Warrior, it's the same thing. You don't want to look for super big lesser mithril spellstones because that's never going to happen. You want to look for more Fiery War Axes, more Rush minions,
more Reapers.
Yeah. I think the best card. Yeah, exactly. I think the best card for a bad deck is Keening Banshee. Keening Banshee is the king or queen, I suppose, of bad decks because it gives you such a huge tempo boost early in the game that your opponent might never recover from it, and you can just. I mean, you're not going to turn 12 anyways because you'll lose. So. It has no downside, and it helps your bad cards get even better.
Yeah.
Finally, there's a few cards that you would not normally take because that's just saying here draft aggro, take the best cards for aggro. There's a few cards that you might not normally take that actually help you in an aggro deck where they wouldn't help you in another strategy. And
sure.
I think my favorite example of that is Mogushan Warden, a 4-mana 1/7 taunt. It's been around since the dawn of Hearthstone. It's not a good card. Its stats are just allocated poorly, and it doesn't even pass the vanilla test. But what it does do is protect 2 or 3 minions for 1 to 2 turns, and that means they can attack your opponent's face more times. So Stonehill Defender is, again, a good card, but you will see a few. Another example of that, you want cards that can, for a reasonably small amount of mana, sit there and soak up attacks from your opponent while you go face with your 2/1s and 3/2s and 4/4s.
Yeah, I love taking like Tar Creepers in decks like that. Like,
yeah.
like even though it seems like this is like not going to do much, like it's what it does for the rest of your cards that's important. As you were talking, like I think the thing that I think back to is like when I started Hearthstone and when I wasn't as good at Arena, I loved Druid. Like I've just always loved the like aura of Druid and like the story of Druid and all like the games I've played. And Druid sucked, and I'm like, I'm gonna make Druid work. And like I think through that like struggle, I think I kind of learned all the things that you're talking about because like I was like, I need double Savage Roar and like 3 or 4 swipes and like like everything, like Argent Commanders, like you want. And the other thing I was gonna bring up that I think was maybe you didn't bring up was you do want to try to take some things like Spellbreaker. Like you're gonna need some ways. You need ways to deal with taunts that still put board presence or still put pressure. So like. You don't want to take like Assassinates in a like, let's say it's a bad rogue deck. You don't want to take Assassinates. You might take a Sap because you don't need 5 mana like to get through that and get rid of it. You just need one more turn to like get past that last taunt. So like you need to kind of look for like a couple utility cards to help you stay on the board. Maybe a few taunts to protect your board. But like you don't want to go like. If you start going too far down that path, it's a delicate balance because if you go too many taunts or too many removals, then all of a sudden your deck's not aggressive enough and you won't ever make it. But you just need to like, you have to kind of learn how to balance that. Because I'll look for things like, I'm like, okay, this deck sucks, I need a Spellbreaker. Because like when they play that Steed, I'm not going to have him dead by turn 6. And like, I need a way to deal with that or I'm just not going to make it. You know, like the game's going to end. So, yeah.
100% agree with that. So for a quick moment of Hearthstone history, and actually it involves a now member of the Hearthstone design team.
Yeah.
Do you remember last year, or maybe it was the year before? Maybe I don't remember now, but Chalky was number 1 on the Hearthstone.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That was surprising to a lot of people because he's a Hearthstone constructed player.
Right.
He said that a lot of times he would have bad decks, and this is exactly what he would do. He would take Shadow Ragers, 2-3 mana 5/1s. Yeah. He would have a Magma Rager or a Duskboar, these cards that are not good. But he would hide them behind a taunt and just keep going face, and sometimes you just get there, even with a bad deck. So honestly, this is not about going 12, because if you try this strategy at 12, you know, even at 8 wins, your opponent's going to have Phantom Knives, Blizzard, Flamestrike, Holy Nova, whatever. Something that's going to wreck you. You're just going to lose. But if you're trying this just to get past a bad record, especially if you're considering leaderboard runs where you can't really have a 1 or 3 win deck, then going super aggro with bad cards is a way to get wins when you normally wouldn't be able to.
Right. Yeah. That's true. Yeah, because like, it's funny. Like once I became, I don't know, an Infinite player, I guess, I started realizing it's like, why don't I mean, I really rarely, to be flat honest with you, like, I don't go 3 wins or less very often at all. And I think that's partly because of this strategy, which is basically, it's also in the gameplay of these decks, you got to understand, you need to recognize early if you're not going to make it. Like, there's sometimes when you realize it's like, yep, this guy's going to get 2 really good value trades on me, and he's going to knock me off the board, but like my only way to win right now is with this Fireball, and I got to somehow get that much damage to his face to give myself even a chance to draw an out in my deck that I don't even have yet. Like, sometimes, like, your only out is a card you don't even have. So you have to, like, and you've got to recognize immediately when that's the case, because that's when you have to really, I always call it like you turn the switch on. Like, that's when it's like, okay, like, I've already lost this game based on like a regular way a game goes. So now I'm going to have to basically claw at his face. Like, I always call it clawing, you know, like you're basically like desperately clawing to try to make it there, you know, and
they're pouring the dirt onto your grave, and you're just trying to escape out of the hole.
Right. And like 70% of the time, or 75% of the time in the situations, you're not going to make it. But you know what? Like, it's better to get that one extra win that every 4 games than to just basically play a way that like only 1% of the time wins. You know what I mean? And that's
you're giving yourself the highest chance to win when normally you are at a just huge disadvantage, and it's hard to do because it means making suboptimal plays for a normal game. A normal game, you would never attack face with your 2/3 when they have a 2/2, right? You just eat it up.
Right.
Like if they have a 3/3 and a 2/3, you'd eat their 2/2. No, not anymore. Sometimes you just got to go face for 2. You just got to get it because the only way to do it is to finish them off with the second charge of your Fiery War Axe or whatever it is. So.
Yeah. I love getting cards in those decks. Like I think the key cards for me are like Argent Horse Rider, or no, I mean not Argent Commander. Cards like that, like those cards that give you that last little bit of like giddy up.
Yeah, just to sneak in there. Wolf Rider becomes all of a sudden one of your best guys. Reckless Rocketeer is another card that you'll be picking. So cards with charge, even this is going to sound insane, but even Stone Tusk Boar is worth taking over other bad cards because if you play it on 1, that's maybe almost a Sinister Strike, and they spend a mana or 2 on it, and that's good for you. Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of like I think that one of the best examples I can remember is my 12-win double Sabertooth Tiger. Is it Sabertooth? What is it? What is that?
Sabertooth Stalker.
Yeah, that card. Okay, so like it was a really bad deck. I think in the last 10 picks, I'm like, I need Reacher. This deck's gonna just suck. But I made it, and the deck was killing people. And I mean, honestly, I bet you if I did that run with that same deck another 5 times, I bet you like maybe one other time it would have made over 7. Like maybe. But the thing was I played it to my outs and I took the risk and but if I didn't have those stalkers, that deck would have never had a chance at 12. So like it's interesting. It's like the next level thinking of your deck is like really understanding that your deck sucks and you need a win condition, and you basically sometimes have to kind of create one. So yeah.
All right, well, I think that's our show for today, Kelly Dar. We're going to do some clips here in a second.
Yeah. I have a very special clip tribute. I'm excited. I haven't told anyone except you.
Oh, really? Oh, good. I won't say any. I won't spoil it then.
Yeah, don't spoil it.
So today we talked about, we did a class focus on Priest. We talked about how they need early game cards like Spirit Lash or Shadow Word Pain to stay in the game. And then they need to have a few 2-for-1s and a smaller number of late game cards than you're used to in classic Priest metas. We talked about overrated, underrated, which was Vicious Scalehide and Paragon of Light, and introduced the vanilla test through that, which I hope you guys use in the future. It's not my test. It's from Magic the Gathering, and I think it's from I don't know who came up with the initial statement, but it's been used in Magic for a long time. And then we talked about how to salvage a bad draft by switching to aggro. So that was our show for today. I'm Kellen Abel.
Yep. See you, man. I'll see you in a second. We're gonna do a draft with him after the show if you stick around.
So. Yeah, I'll be back then. I'll see you guys in a little bit.
Okay. See you, Kellen. All right, guys. So we're gonna switch. To a very special tribute that I've created. Well, actually, I didn't really create it, but I'm not gonna show the whole thing, just part of it. But here we go. All right. All right. I'm not going to show the whole thing, but I'm going to show certain parts of it. Okay. All right. We're going to skip ahead a little bit. This is the best.
It actually happened, and I can't even see the log when it's burned.
That's dramatic.
Oh my god. I blame the Lich King.
We'll never be able to see that card.
All right. When he casts Doom, this is really good.
Stop this madness.
Wait, no. Cancel. Oh no, that's the wrong deck.
That's the wrong deck? It's the wrong deck?
Bail out!
Stop watching the stream! Turn it off, count to 100 and come back.
It's like the one thing we have to say highlighted the deck that we were supposed to play.
Oh
all right.
my god, it's filling the loading bar. Eat Wormguard, because I really...
This is my favorite, though.
I really want it to be a 4/11 with taunt.
Yeah.
So I think I'll absolutely run this out. We have a number of removal options that we can follow up with. And I'm so so good at Hearthstone. That's.
Oh my gosh.
I'm gonna miss Ben Brode. I really will.
There was a moment where I was like, Ben, something's wrong. The card has turned yellow, and now it's like, very well. Let's go ahead and gobble them up. And
These card reveals are not gonna be the same.
That was beautiful. Really? That's good. I was worried. With you guys.
Not happy about.
This is feigned ignorance. I'm so
How does he laugh so much?
Fun. I mostly just.
Are you watching? Are you watching right now, Trans? So stay
All right, guys. So that's my little clip or whatever to finish it off. So we'll miss you, Ben Brode. All right, guys. We'll see you next week for episode 3. It'll be same time, same place. I'll see you then.